Minister, it is right and proper that we should direct huge resources, the necessary resources, to protect jobs and incomes of ordinary workers and a small business and struggling business that are impacted by the economic fallout of COVID-19. But would you agree with me that it would completely be unacceptable for companies that are hugely profitable, paying large dividends to shareholders, or who are, for example, registered offshore for tax purposes, to be gaining significant benefit? I'm aware of one company, for example, I won't name it, but 1,000 employees is getting the wage subsidy scheme, which paid 25 million in dividends to its shareholders, is also availing of wage subsidies in the UK, and meantime has slashed its contributions to the pension scheme for its own employees. Right? That's not acceptable. Boston Scientific, another company, well known, $1 billion profits last year, availing from the wage subsidy, pay very little tax as it is, and maybe you can inform us how many offshore companies but operating here are availing from supports, wage subsidy schemes, or any other grants or supports from the state. Now, in contrast to that, you have talked about, well, those companies maybe not deserving, and I hope we'll get answers on that, if not today, in writing or subsequently. You talk about tapering off income supports for others who really will need it. And I want to urge you not to do that, particularly for sectors where adherence to public health guidelines and the fallout of the public health emergency will mean there will be no return to normal or viability for many of those sectors for the foreseeable future. And to ask you to engage directly with workers and representatives from those sectors to discuss their future and viability. Specifically, I want to ask about the arts, live entertainment, music and so on, who are really facing a very bleak future, if any future in the short term. Taxi drivers, where again they're linked to things like arts, live entertainment, tourism and so on, mean their future is deeply precarious. I'm asking you, not exhausted to those groups, to meet with those groups, engage with them urgently to discuss how we can secure a future for these workers, very important for us, but whose future is very bleak. English foreign language might be another one that we need to consider. And very lastly, can I appeal to you that people who are on maternity leave and then returning to work should be given the payment, should be given the income, the wage subsidy scheme. It's complete discrimination against people who are really in effect working but on maternity leave to be denied that payment.
Thank you, Deputy, for your different questions there. So the maternity leave issue that you've raised there, Deputy, I've explained earlier on in this session that I am looking at options to see if we can resolve that matter, because the legislation as drafted was absolutely, we were looking to treat everybody equally at a time of great need. And in all of the different issues that are now being raised in relation to the operation of the scheme, please let's also recognise there are well over 400,000 citizens who are now availing of this scheme who, if they weren't, the companies for which they work for might no longer be around. So it's been an invaluable intervention into supporting our economy at a time of huge strain. I will see if it is possible for you, Deputy, to get information in relation to the so-called offshore status of different companies. It may not be, but you'll appreciate the challenge that I have is if those companies are employing people here in Ireland, I want those citizens to still have a job. And that's what I was looking to respond back to. In relation to the point that you made about dividend payments, the Pandemic Stabilisation Fund that is now available, we have a number of criteria in relation to that fund to deal with some of the issues that you are referring to. Because if the state goes all the way towards, for example, providing very credit at a very low rate to companies, or indeed goes so far as taking an equity stake in companies, then I think the issues that you're referring to are very important. We need to ensure that companies act appropriately and are not advantaging themselves or their shareholders at a time in which the Irish government ends up playing a very significant role in their own affairs. In relation to the point that you've made about the future of the different income supports that are there, Deputy, as the Finance Minister, who, along with Minister Regina Doherty and Minister Heather Humphreys, brought in all of these supports, I'm absolutely aware of the importance that they play at the moment. But where you will differ with me, I know, Deputy, is that I'm also of the view that we have to find a way in which we can afford these kind of measures in the future. And then, Deputy, in relation to the different groups that you've referred to be honest with you, I can't give an agreement to you that I'll be able to meet all of them. I know there are many other different ministers who are meeting groups at the moment, and in turn those ministers are meeting me.
Paul Murphy.